40,000-year-old symbols rewrite history. Lost chapter of human history unearthed. 40,000-year-old symbols reveal earliest known system of communication. A remarkable discovery in southwestern Germany is reshaping what we know about the origins of human communication. Archaeologists studying ancient carvings from the caves of the Swabian Jura have uncovered evidence of a structured symbolic system dating back as far as 43,000 years, 10 of thousands of years before the first known writing systems appeared in Mesopotamia. Now it's time to dig deeper and understand the full story through this AI podcast.
Whenever we talk about the dawn of history, we usually have a very specific image in our heads.
Right.
Like we think of the Photo Crescent, we think of Sumer, and we definitely think of clay tablets.
Oh, absolutely. The standard timeline, it's around 3400 BC. People in Mesopotamia start pressing reeds into wet clay
Right.
to count grain or beer rations, and then suddenly, poof, humanity becomes literate.
Exactly. That is the line in the sand for most of us. Everything before that is just, prehistory.
Campfire stories.
Right. Campfire stories. Maybe some handprints on a cave wall. But I've been reading through this new source material called Echoes in Ivory. And it is, it's making me question that entire narrative.
It really pulls the rug out from under it.
It does, because it feels like we're looking at a timeline that isn't just, slightly off, but missing a massive chunk of the human story.
It is a staggering thought. What we are unpacking today is evidence that pushes the whole concept of complex, symbolic communication back not just by a few centuries, but by roughly 35 to 40,000 years.
Which is, trying to wrap your head around that. We're talking about the Ice Age here.
We're transporting you, the listener, to the Swabian Jura.
Which is in southwestern Germany, right?
Exactly. Southwestern Germany, about 40,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And the mission of our deep dive today is to really look at how early Homo sapiens in this specific region were using a complex code.
A code of lines and dots.
Lines, dots, crosses. They were using these to store information long before civilization, as we define it, even existed. And the key takeaway here is that this wasn't just art.
Right. And that's the distinction I really want to drill into today. Because, you listening right now, you're probably smart. You know about Lascaux.
The cave paintings.
Yeah, the paintings of the bulls and the horses. We always frame that as this sudden explosion of artistic creativity.
Right.
But this research suggests something much more analytical was happening right alongside that art.
Precisely. This isn't about the beautiful rendering of a bison. This is about the tiny, deliberate scratches found on the tools and the figurines right next to those paintings.
And the scope of this is huge.
It is. We're looking at research involving 260 prehistoric relics, over 3,000 individual engravings.
Wow.
And this was all analyzed by researchers like Christian Bentz from Saarland University and Iwa Dutkiewicz from the Museum of Prehistory and Early History in Berlin.
And they didn't just, look at them under a magnifying glass and take a wild guess.
No, not at all. They applied rigorous statistical analysis.
Algorithms, right?
Yes, they used algorithms to measure something called information density, which, we will definitely get into that because it completely changes how you view these objects.
Okay, so let's set the scene first, because I want to picture this. The Swabian Jura, 40,000 years ago, the Argonation period. What exactly are they pulling out of the dirt in these caves?
It's an incredible collection of artifacts, but it's important to visualize the scale here. These are not massive stone monuments.
Right.
These are highly portable objects. They found flutes carved from vulture bone and mammoth ivory.
Some of the oldest instruments in the world, actually.
Exactly. They found pendants, personal ornaments, specialized tools.
But the real stars of the show, the things we really need to talk about, are the figurines.
Absolutely. There are these small, just incredibly detailed figurines carved directly from mammoth ivory.
Like the mammoth from Vogelherd Cave.
Yes. The Vogelherd mammoth. It's this tiny mammoth, perfectly shaped. The craftsmanship is just exquisite. But for the longest time, archaeologists were so focused on the shape of the animal that they just ignored the texture.
The scratches on it.
Right. If you look really closely at the flank of that mammoth, or say the side of one of those bone flutes, it's entirely covered in lines, X's, and dots.
Okay, but let me just play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
Humans fidget. We doodle. If I'm sitting in a cave waiting for a blizzard to pass, and I have a sharp rock in one hand and a piece of bone in the other, I might just start scratching lines into it.
Sure.
So how do we actually know this isn't just, Paleolithic boredom?
That is the million-dollar question. And that is exactly where Iwo Dutkevich's work comes into play. Because if it were just doodling, if you were just fidgeting, you would expect randomness.
Like random zigzags and stuff.
Exactly. You'd see a chaotic mix of shapes that totally change from person to person or from cave to cave.
But that's not what they found.
No. They identified a highly specific set of 22 recurring symbols.
Just 22.
22 distinct shapes that appear repeatedly across all 260 objects. And we're talking about a span of thousands of years.
That's wild.
We're seeing parallel lines, crosses, dots, and these very specific V-shaped notches.
Now, 22 seems like a weird number to me. I mean, the English alphabet has 26 letters. Is 22 enough symbols to actually communicate anything meaningful?
Well, think about it this way. Computers run the entire modern internet on just 2 distinct states.
Oh, right, ones and zeros.
Right. And DNA encodes every single living thing on Earth with just 4 bases. So 22 is actually a massive amount of variability if you are combining them in sequences.
That's a really fair point.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have these 22 recurring symbols. But just because something recurs doesn't automatically make it a language or a code.
True.
I mean, I could draw a smiley face on 200 different napkins, but it doesn't mean I'm writing a novel.
Also true. But this is where 2 very specific artifacts come into play. The Adorant and the Lion Man. Because these are the artifacts that suggest real intentional structure.
Describe the Adorant for us, for those who haven't seen it.
It was found in Geisenklusterl Cave.
Yeah.
It's a small plate of mammoth ivory carved in relief, and it depicts a figure standing with its arms raised.
Like it's worshiping.
Exactly. That's why it's called the Adorant, or the worshipper. But the anatomy it's strange. It's a hybrid.
A hybrid, like a mythological creature.
Yes. It has the stance of a human, but it has the head and the features of a lion. And all along this plate, there are these rows of small, highly deliberate notches.
And then there's the Lion Man, which is arguably even more famous.
The Lion Man of Hollenstein-Stadel. It's a statue, roughly a foot tall, also carved from a mammoth tusk. And again, it's half human, half lion. But what's crucial is that on its left arm, there are 7 distinct horizontal notches.
7.
7. And they're spaced perfectly evenly.
Okay, yeah. Evenly spaced completely implies intent. You don't just accidentally slip with a piece of flint and make 7 perfectly equidistant lines.
Exactly. That spacing screams counting or listing. And this brings us right to the core of Christian Bentz's statistical analysis, because he wanted to move beyond just looking at it and saying, hey, this looks like a pattern.
Wanted to prove it.
He wanted to prove it mathematically, so his team analyzed the information density of these objects.
All right, let's unpack that term. Information density. Because that sounds like something straight out of computer science class, not an archaeological dig.
It really does.
What does information density actually mean in the context of a 40,000-year-old piece of bone?
So in information theory, specifically when you're looking at entropy, you are essentially measuring the relationship between signal and noise.
Okay.
Random scratches, that doodling you mentioned earlier, they have low density, they are predictable in their randomness, or they're just simple repeating textures to represent fur or something.
Oh, just back and forth shading.
Exactly. But a code or a script has high entropy. It's completely unpredictable until you know the key, and it packs a massive amount of variation into a very small space. So Bentz literally measured the number of distinct symbol changes per unit of surface area.
And what did the numbers actually say?
They showed a massive, undeniable split based on the type of object. The everyday tools, the scrapers, the awls, they had very low information density.
Which completely makes sense. You don't write your memoirs on the handle of a screwdriver.
Right. A tool might have a single mark that says, this belongs to Grog, or maybe it just has a textured grip so it doesn't slip. But the figurines, the jewelry, the information density on those skyrocketed.
Wow.
The statistical signature looked significantly less like decoration and much more like data storage.
So they were essentially treating these figurines like hard drives.
That is honestly the best way to think about it. The research heavily suggests a hierarchy of purpose. You have your utilitarian objects for daily chores, and then you have your storage vessels.
Because if you are a highly mobile hunter-gatherer, you can't exactly carry around a library of clay tablets.
No, they're way too heavy.
But a tiny ivory lion, you can just slip that right into a pouch.
And if that lion is completely covered in high-density symbols, it's carrying the tribe's most important, crucial information.
Okay, but here is where I get a bit stuck. If this is definitively a code, and it's distinct from just art, are we saying it's writing? Like, were they writing sentences?
No, and that is a very important distinction to make. Benz points out that the patterns are often repetitive. You see sequences like cross, cross, line, line.
Yeah.
Human speech just doesn't work like that. We don't speak in repeating clusters of the same sound.
So it's not phonetic. It's not, C-A-T spells cat.
Right. It's not an alphabet. It's highly likely a mnemonic system, a code designed to bypass spoken language entirely and trigger memory directly. Think of it kind of like a musical score.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Or a knitting pattern. Or a mathematical formula. You don't read a math formula like a conversation, but it conveys an immense amount of complex data.
That makes perfect sense. But this actually leads us to the part of the research that I personally found the most shocking. The direct comparison to the Sumerians.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the lost timeline aspect of the deep dive.
Because we literally started this show saying history begins at 3400 BC with cuneiform.
We did.
But when Bentz compared the information density of these Ice Age carvings to early proto-cuneiform tablets, the very dawn of writing, what did he actually find?
He found that they were statistically indistinguishable.
Indistinguishable.
In terms of sheer structural complexity, yes. The amount of information packed into a square inch of a mammoth tusk in 40,000 BC is roughly the exact same as the amount of information packed into a clay tablet in 3400 BC.
That completely upends the whole primitive narrative we've been taught. We always tend to think of human cognition as this really slow, gradual upward slope.
Right.
Like, we were basically dumb for a really long time, and then we finally figured out farming, and then we magically got smart enough to write things down.
But the math says otherwise. The math clearly says that the cognitive hardware, the human ability to abstract, to code, to store complex data externally, that was fully online and operating at a civilized level 35,000 years before civilization even existed.
But that begs a huge question. If they had a system that was just as complex as early cuneiform, why did it just sit there?
What do you mean?
Like, why didn't it evolve into full written language? Why did we have to wait 35,000 years for someone to write a receipt?
It's a fascinating stagnation, isn't it? Or maybe continuity is a much better word for it. Because the research highlights that for nearly 35 millennia, this specific system didn't really change at all. The symbols they used deep in the Aurignacian period were incredibly similar to the ones used right before the agricultural revolution.
That's a really long time to stick with the exact same operating system.
It is, but it suggests that the system wasn't primitive. It was perfect.
Perfect for them.
Exactly. It did exactly what a hunter-gatherer society needed it to do. They didn't need to record massive grain shipments or track tax debts, which, by the way, is exactly what drove the invention of cuneiform in Sumer.
So the need changed, not the human brain.
Precisely. When you live in a dense city surrounded by strangers, you need a phonetic script that can represent speech so you can write a binding contract.
Makes sense.
But when you live in a small, tight-knit band of people you've known your whole life, you just need a mnemonic code to remember complex rituals or seasonal cycles. The tool simply fit the task.
Okay, so if we accept that it's a code, and it worked flawlessly for 35,000 years, what on earth were they recording? What was so incredibly important that it had to be painstakingly carved into the arm of the Lion Man?
The source material gives us three main theories for this, and honestly, they likely overlap a bit. The first theory is seasonal tracking.
Like calendars.
Right. If you are a hunter-gatherer trying to survive the Ice Age, predicting the future is the ultimate survival skill.
Knowing when the food is coming.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When will the reindeer herds migrate? When do the salmon run? When exactly is the worst of winter going to hit?
So those 7 notches on the Lion Man's arm, could those be lunar cycles?
Very possibly lunar cycles. Or months. Tracking time gives you a measure of control over a very hostile environment.
Okay, what's the second theory?
Ritual or spiritual guidance. And this theory connects directly back to the hybrid figures. The Adderant and the Lion Man are clearly not natural creatures. You don't see them walking around the tundra.
Right, they belong to the realm of mythology or religion.
Exactly. So the symbols on them might be, well, they might be instructions.
Instructions.
Like spells. Spells, prayers, or the exact sequence for a highly complex ceremony. If the Lion Man is a shamanic figure, the markings could quite literally be the script for the ritual, a physical cheat sheet for the shaman to ensure the ceremony is performed flawlessly.
I absolutely love the idea of a 40,000-year-old cheat sheet.
It makes a lot of sense if you think about it. Rituals are incredibly complex. You do not want to mess them up and anger the spirits. Externalizing that memory directly onto the idol ensures the ritual stays pure generation after generation.
And the third theory.
Accounting.
It always comes back to accounting, doesn't it?
It always does. The grouped markings, the distinct tallies, it really looks like keeping score. This could be counting members of the tribe, specific resources, hunting kills, or even complex social debts.
But here's the thing that really points to it being a highly sophisticated system. It's the rules. The researchers found that you couldn't just put any random symbol on any random object.
Right. This was a crucial finding by the team. They noticed very specific conventions being followed. Certain symbols appeared frequently on human figurines, but they never, ever appeared on animal figures.
Wow.
And other symbols were completely exclusive to the feline figures.
So there was an actual grammar to it, a kind of
Sure.
syntax of object.
Exactly. You don't put the human symbol on the lion statue. And that implies a deeply shared set of social rules. It means everyone in the group, or at least the initiated members, they knew the code. You couldn't just make it up as you went along.
But that requires collective memory. That requires an institution of teaching.
And that, to me, is the biggest takeaway of this entire deep dive. We aren't just looking at a lonely guy carving a piece of bone by a fire to pass the time.
Yeah.
We are looking at a school. We are looking at a formal tradition being passed down, virtually unchanged, for millennia.
It really challenges our entire definition of what it means to be historic. We always say history starts with writing because that's when people start speaking to the future. But this research suggests they were speaking to the future long, long before we ever gave them credit for it.
They absolutely were. They were externalizing thought. That is the massive evolutionary leap here. Animals have great memories, but humans, we take our memories entirely out of our heads and we put them into the physical world.
The moment someone carved that first figurine, that is the first time we essentially said, I might die tomorrow, but this information needs to stay.
Precisely. It's the birth of the archive. Whether it's a massive server farm today or a tiny mammoth tusk 40,000 years ago, the underlying human impulse is completely identical.
It's a bit tragic, though, if you think about it.
Yeah.
We have the hard drives, but we've completely lost the password.
We have. We can see the elegant structure, we can mathematically measure the density, we can statistically prove it's a code, but we cannot read the message. We simply don't know if the Lion Man's arm says 7 moons or 7 ancestors.
Ewa Dutkevich had a really great quote in the source material about exactly this.
Yes, she said, we've only just scratched the surface. And she meant that both literally and figuratively, because she points out that there are literally thousands of these artifacts just sitting in museum drawers right now.
Like stuff that was dug up 100 years ago.
Exactly. Dug up in the 20s, labeled decorative bone, and just thrown in a dusty drawer. We haven't even looked at them with this new statistical lens yet. There are countless untranslated sign sequences just waiting to be analyzed.
So the actual Rosetta Stone for the Ice Age might literally be sitting in a cardboard box in a basement in Berlin right now.
It might be. Or it might be finding the hidden pattern that connects the Lion Man to a bone flute found 1,000 miles away. We are only just beginning to see the edges of the network.
It's an incredibly humbling reminder that our ancestors weren't just, shivering in the dark trying to survive the cold. They were thinkers.
They were.
They were data analysts. They were storytellers who built a brilliant system to make absolutely sure their story outlasted them.
And in a very real way, it worked. The codes survived the Ice Age. We're just a little late to the party in trying to understand it.
Well, I know I'm certainly going to look at those museum exhibits a little differently next time. Instead of just seeing a pretty carving of a mammoth, I'm going to be looking for the code.
As we all should. There is so much more to find.
That's it for this deep dive into echoes and ivory. Thanks for listening, and keep asking questions about the past. There are countless sequences out there waiting to tell a story we thought we forgot.
Until next time.
Okay, one question for you. What does the discovery of high information density symbols on mammoth ivory figurines reveal about the cultural sophistication and communication abilities of humans living 40,000 years ago? Don't forget to comment it. Thanks.